So there are fungi that can cause disease, and fungi are unicellular organisms. We mostly think about yeast when we think about fungi. So making beer, wine, and bread. There are some fungi that can actually cause disease. One of those is Candida albicans. It causes vaginal yeast infections. Lactobacillus is one of those things that can actually helps to prevent it, helps to outcompete it. So usually women are told, have some yogurt to kind of stave off those yeast infections. Thrush is a yeast infection that happens in the mouth and in the throat. Recently in the news, I've heard about another fungi, another Candida species, Candida auris, which is actually drug resistant and causing disease, especially in the elderly. And this has been a big concern in long term care facilities because the elderly, their immune system is compromised. And this particular species is drug resistant. This is one of those species that never used to infect humans. It actually did not like the warmer temperatures of the human body, but because of climate change, it's actually become more adapted to warmer temperatures. So now we're actually seeing infections in people. So this has become a public health concern recently. Aspergillus can cause aspergillosis. This can cause respiratory infections. In the news, I've heard a few incidences of geese actually getting aspergillosis. So oftentimes people will take bread to ponds and lakes and they'll feed the wildlife. So they'll feed the ducks and the geese. And I know of some cases where people were actually feeding moldy bread to the ducks and to the geese, and they were actually getting aspergillosis and dying. So a lot of places are recommending don't bring bread with you because of this reason. Cryptococcus is a club fungi. This can cause some opportunistic respiratory infections. So if somebody is immunocompromised, this could cause some issues. Probably the ones that we're also familiar with, ringworm and athlete's foot. Now, I remember growing up thinking that ringworm was a worm, that it was a helminth. I remember one of my classmates in the fourth grade had ringworm, and I remember seeing it on his hand, and it actually has this round shape. I thought he had a worm living under his skin. It completely freaked me out. It wasn't until years later I found out that ringworm is actually a fungi. My daughter had ringworm in the first grade. It was in the oddest location. It was on her forehead, and we saw this rash, and it wasn't really going away, so we brought her to the doctor and they said, oh, that's ringworm. So they gave us topical antifungal and it cleared up. Never really could figure out where she got this ringworm on her forehead. The only thing that we could figure out, when she rode the school bus, she would rest her head on the window, and you know how bus windows are not the cleanest of places, and it's a very kind of wet, humid environment. That was the only thing that we could think of that possibly introduced that. To this day, I really have no idea, but that was really our best guess. And the topical antifungal did a good job of clearing it up. Athlete's foot is another fungus infection. Now they have sprays and powders that help with that. This was one of those things that my mother used to warn me about. If you're going into public pools or public showers, make sure you're wearing flip-flops because you could get athlete's foot. So here are a couple of pictures just so that you can see the ringworm, and you can see that circle. It really does kind of look like a worm. And then you can see the flakiness of that athlete's foot. Again, a topical antifungal is going to be able to clear these things up.